It's Colleen Schmidt once again from Divination Counseling Service, here to present today the full moon chart of October 1st, 2020. So I'm going to again use two different software so that we can look at it in its simplest form, and then we can get a little complicated. But I want to explain more or less the purpose of why we would do this chart and then also do the new moon charts and which one takes precedence. Well, in astrology, they all take precedence. If you think of the new moon as a chart of kind of a drive, what drives us, what's going to be driving us, then you have to look at the full moon as how we deal with that or how we accept that. Is that something that we're enhancing and moving forward with? Or is that something that's causing us to step back for a moment and maybe look at what's going on? So I want to, whenever you do a series of charts, and I do this every time I do natal work, I do this every time I do solar return work, secondary progressed work, you got to look at all the charts. Okay, to get a really good feel of what's going on. For example, if I'm going to do a solar return, I have to do a precess solar return as well as the regular solar return, and then I have to relay them back to the natal chart. That's how all astrology works. I think you could come up with an answer on a blank chart, don't get me wrong, but I think if you started looking at that chart in comparison to other charts that would be related in that series, you would find there's a tremendous amount more information that it would have taken you a lot longer to study to get that will now jump off the page at you. So you don't, it's almost like it's right there. If you go to the new moon chart and then you look at the full moon chart, you're going to get that picture. You're going to get that. So that's why we do it. So I first wanted to explain that. So before I jump into the chart, as always, I want to say thank you to all the people who are subscribing, whether it be this YouTube channel, my website, or the newsletter. I love the contact, I love the interaction, and I would love to hear from you. So like, comment, share, enjoy what it is that we're presenting here, and hopefully learning from it. That would be my biggest goal, that you actually gain something from everything we're going through. With that said, I'm going to turn to the chart. Today I'm going to add in looking a little bit more at the Aries point and just to see what we can determine from that point and that perspective as well. So if we would, as always, it didn't change this time. I'm so thrilled. So we're looking at the chart, the lunar phase chart for October 1st, 2020. I did it for Lancaster. I think I'm going to actually edit it. So let me edit it for Washington, D.C. I forget that my computers are automatically set for Lancaster. It won't be very different because Lancaster is so close to Washington, D.C. But I like when the charts say it. So hold on one moment. Okay, so I'm back and we have the full moon chart corrected, and I don't know if anyone noticed, the degrees did not change. Maybe a few minutes, but it really didn't change. It never does. It's one of the biggest mistakes I make all the time because I like to use Washington, D.C. It's more central on the East Coast, and it's also our country's capital. Where I live is definitely within driving distance to Washington, D.C. I've got family close by there. So, but it isn't, where I live is not the same. So I wanted to put Washington on there, and we have it. Now I'm going to look at this chart. One thing I want to point out about this chart right away is the 28-38 degree ascendant and descendant. When you get that far into the decans, that's what we call the every 10 degrees of the zodiac. It is referring to the end cycles, the ending cycles, okay? So I think for this chart, I want to think on a personal level, but I'll just throw it out there because it's true. Politically, we are also looking at the end we're coming to another election. Okay, so for many people, it will be an end. Okay, I'm not going to make any predictions. I have a lot of wishes, but I'm not going to make any predictions. I will say this, though, does kind of really emphasize the ending. I do want to say that, okay? Now, some other things I thought were really interesting here, and I have some notes because I did do this work earlier and I like to have notes to talk about. This has some really interesting, I started working on this a few days ago. It has some really dynamic aspects to it. Okay, let's start by talking about the opposition here of Mercury and Uranus. Okay, that is scary. Okay, because it also comes with Mars that is also squaring Pluto and Saturn. Okay, so there's a couple of things, and all from the second house, which is Ione, Imworth. It's the money house. Okay, and it makes me a little bit concerned that people could be impulsive with money, but I think it's not just money. Again, I don't want to go back to politics, but it's the best thing that we have for an example. They are ramrodding. They are rushing this Ruth Ginsburg's seat. They're rushing to fill this justice seat, okay? That's not good. Not in this chart. It's not good. So the new moon would have brought us the 17th. The new situation, she died during Rosh Hashanah, which is a high holiday, and it says really good things about her. And as much as I wanted her to hold on till the next election, I think there's a reason why she died during the high holy season for the Jews, because she is in so many ways a saint. At least to me, she is. They're ramrodding. Now, let me tell you a little secret about these configurations. When you're dealing with Mars squaring Saturn and Mars squaring Pluto, the only way that things ever succeed with those squares is by being meticulous, by being cautious, by this, especially that Jupiter, the Saturn Jupiter also, you think Saturn Jupiter must be good. It's only good if you're willing to do the hard work. If you try to be impatient with anything, you're only setting yourself up for failure, and it gets reaffirmed by that square to Mars with both Saturn and Pluto, okay? You're just reaffirming it. And, here again, you're talking about a second house to an 11th house. And I'm going to be really honest with you. The 11th house is another goal house. It's a goal. It's like a group of people creating a goal. It's like a community group. It really does not bode well for the Republicans being successful. It really doesn't. I'm not going to say why they are or they're not. I'm just going to say going about it the way that they are in a more devious way, I believe is not going to work out well for them. So I'm hopeful. Let's see what happens. We'll deal with whatever we get, but I'm sure that if we're going to talk about this full moon chart, and this is the 1st of October, this is going to have a very strong bearing on what's going on in politics at this point, if you will. So I definitely wanted to bring that up. The other things, and I love to look at the angles, and I'm going to do it on this chart. I'll probably do it on the next chart as well, because of course we're going to go to solar fire at some point here. But I want to point out that both the north node and the south node, now beautifully the north node falls in a house of home and hearth, and it's healing. It's a really healing to get things in the 4th house. It's a beautiful healing house, okay? The south node is still in play here off of the midheaven or our future. And I really get the sense of bad timing. Again, if you're trying to push something through and it isn't the right time, you're sabotaging yourself. That's the way life works. And looks like you're sabotaging something for the future. Okay, so for all the political people out there, and I don't like to get political, but maybe right now it's okay. I also notice that my political stuff does a little better. So I am going to throw it in there and I'm going to say, this does not bode well for what the Republicans are trying to pull in this situation. I don't think it's going to bode well for the Senate overall. So this is really not good. You really don't want to work that way. You want to work more methodically, more deliberate. You want to be more disciplined. And you know that's not what's going to play out here. So we're already looking at what might not be very good because with Jupiter in conjunction to Saturn, they're going to overshoot their confidence. It's like taking, we could be so confident. We could be so confident. And sure you could. New moon 17th told you could be confident. The full moon does not tell us that. The full moon says, yeah, be confident if you work hard, you do your due diligence, you have a real good shot, you have hope. I'm just thinking, not really. The other thing I want to point out here is 2850 falls right inside the 7th house with Venus, and Venus is a lot of times money. Now, on a personal level, look toward your relationships. It's a great place for relationships. Especially the North and the South Node where they are, I would say to you, personal relationships will be very highlighted during the next several weeks. I think that our closest relationships will be the ones that we trust the most. And it makes sense. We're in an upheaval period here. Huge amount of red stuff going here and here. And look at this Neptune to all of this. Neptune, as we know, is disillusion, deception. But the beauty is it's in the first house, so we're going to know. We're going to see, and that might be why things do not work out the way they politically are trying to set us up for. Sometimes I'm amazed at how unfair politics is on a very obvious level. And I do hope that as we are more conscious and more aware and as we are ascending, and I want to use that word because I believe it's true, as we become more aware and we ascend, I think that we can't miss this stuff and that it doesn't bode well. So that's this, okay? I also believe that some deceptions regarding finances might come into play here. So if that's you, you want to be mindful that you're following all rules and doing exactly what you're supposed to do. If it's not you, look to what's happening with the politics and out there in the world. I think you're going to be a little bit shocked, but I think that it's necessary that we wake up. Look what's going on here. The other thing that's really kind of worth mentioning here is the 7th house to the 1st house, sun and moon. And this plays in with those nodes that I referred to, in that people seem to feel more comfortable with people from their own environment. And I think I said during the new moon chart that it's better, especially with Mars and Aries, even though Mars is retrograde at the moment, till the end of the year, it's Mars and Aries, which is where it's really strong, even if it's not retrograde. And people are nasty. And people have all these opinions, and they're throwing their opinions around. And so sometimes it's just better to stay away from the general population and stick with the people that we know the best. Those from our environment. So I wanted to talk about that. Now, I'm going to talk about a couple other things that show up here just before I jump into the dial. I want to talk about the fact that, and this is going to be a shocker, one of the things we can expect is power struggles because of the Pluto energies. There will be power struggles. I think that's obvious. I think that's already begun if you want to look at it politically. I think that power struggles and disagreements highlight this chart. So it is inevitable. And this is beyond just that Mars, people just being angry. I think anger is one thing, but when you're talking Pluto square Saturn, that's a whole other level. That's almost what I would refer to as resentment level. So there again, it's going to cause for a lot of high energy. And then with the Aries Mars, that high energy is going to come out in all that we do, and it will not always be a positive energy. Again, if you're working at something that's very disciplined, if you're trying to do something slow and methodically, if you are using your energy to continue to work at that project, then you will eventually be successful. Okay? I think that one of the things that we have to be very mindful of right now, and again, we're really referring a lot to these squares, is ruthlessness of another. That we all could be victims of ruthlessness. Well, if we're not seeing that politically, then you haven't been watching television. And it doesn't matter what side you're on, even if you're on the side of Trump in this case, you would see that ruthlessness as a necessity. But what you don't understand, especially if you vote for Trump, you probably are a victim of ruthlessness in a whole other light. So I think for all of us in this country, regardless of what side you fall on the political table, you might find there's an essence of ruthlessness in how this is going to be dealt with. Because unfortunately, politically, what is the old saying? One good turn deserves another. And the Republicans are not and have not for some time been playing fair. And I do believe the Democrats are angry. So, and let that be known nationally, because I heard a statistic that for the first time, at least since I've been alive, 80% of the population is interested in the election. So that's wonderful, regardless of what side you fall on. That is absolutely wonderful. But it does make us angry. It does make us impulsive. It does make us ruthless. And it does throw discipline to the wayside. So unfortunately, there's a lot of bad stuff there. So hopefully, I do want to put out here too, this is clearly in the first house, this Neptune. This is very clearly in that house. It's retrograde. So watch out for what's coming. It's not on an angle, and I'm grateful of that. But it is only 1 degree off of the angle, and it is at 19 degrees of Pisces. It is still very, very strong, even though it is a retrograde. I think that people have been sneaky. I think that financially things are beginning to come out. They are now aware of the infiltration of Russian money or dark money, quote unquote, money laundering that has been done in this country since 1999. They have it going all the way up to 2017. And although we won't be hearing much about that in the regular news, wonder why? I think because it does affect so many wealthy people, so many bank people. And because our press in particular seems to be owned by wealthy people. So it's out there, though, for anyone who seeks it. So I do challenge you to go look it up. It's something that I've always known about. It's just interesting to see it. Now I'm going to pull up this and I'm going to put it on a dial. So I'm going to see if I'm not good with these dials. So I'm just going to take this dial this way. And again, I'm not used to working in this capacity. So I just thought I would take a peek. Okay. One of the things I wanted to point out, and because it's coming, and I knew this because it's on a personal level, this affects me, is Poseidon is not far away from that Aries point. Look to propaganda, but also look to the media. And remember that we're not always getting the truth from the media. So you do have to be a little bit more assertive when it comes to fact finding. I think that eventually things come out, but I think it takes so long. So a couple of things that come up here, and just to show you, they give you aspects. And I do feel like there's a lot of pressure on people. There's a lot of pressure because of money. Money's a huge deal, but honestly, do we really know what's going on? Because both the sun and the moon are affected by that. Remember that Neptune. I had to bring this up because, we might see what's going on, but how dubbed or duped we have been, I think is just something that we're only going to become aware of. And that's going to be going on over a period of time. So we also have a Jupiter midheaven. So despite what things may look like right now, I think politically in particular, things get better. Okay. I definitely want to say, though, look also to this Neptune Hades. That's kind of really in there. And that is, if you think about Hades as even this disease and what we did, I think more things are going to come out about that. I really do. Hades it didn't play a huge role in the actual chart. Let me go back and just for a second look at that. Okay. And you see Hades. Oh, I forgot to put it on. Let's put it on. Here we go. It isn't on, so let's add Chiron. Also, Chiron makes an interesting stance here. So I'm going to just throw just those on. They're really important. There we go. Okay, so now all of a sudden, we have like a lot of stuff over here. A lot of stuff here. Okay, so the chart's filled up a little. I didn't bother initially putting them on. I know why, because there wasn't a lot of influence coming from them for any of the angles or there. As a matter of fact, even aspect wise, okay, we still have Hades Kronos going on. That's going to keep building until 2030. And that is, bad leaders, guys. I just want to say that is literally bad leaders. There's also doctors, so look for medical breakthroughs, but it's also bad leaders that we're going to be hearing about until 2030. No surprise there. You just nearly have to pick up the newspaper and see what's going on in the world. So this is now in play on the dial. See, because remember, the dial brings up things that are not on here. Like nowhere on here do you realize that there's a Neptune, sun, and moon. Doesn't look like it. Okay, there's a moon, but I don't see where anything applies to Neptune. But if you go to that dial, and it's really important to do that, you will be able to see the difference. Okay. And again, this is not my favorite kind of a dial. So as we go through here, we also see all this pressure, and there's a lot of pressure concerning money. And the reality is, realize that these Republicans are jumping on this bandwagon to get this justice in there, but they haven't done a darn thing to help the people with this virus we've had for months that's causing a lot of financial issue. So I just want to throw that out there because I think that that's a big deal too. So as we come to the other Aries point, okay, which is 2230. Also over here, it would be 730 on the mutables, okay? So hold on a minute. 2230, 22, 1, 2, 30. Yeah. And then this would be 6730. Perfect. Okay. I'm not used to the dial. I really apologize. A couple of things. I feel like there will be delays coming in for matters. I believe that the Mercury moon is also about Mercury is about communications, because I believe communication is going to come very, very quickly. And when I first looked at, and I did want to write this down, that when you look at Mercury in opposition, okay, because this is actually something I wrote about. When you look at that, Mercury here, okay? Realize that Mercury was also in the chart in opposition. First thing I talked about was in its opposition to Uranus, and how that wasn't too cool, because if you move too quickly, you're definitely going to cause destruction. That what's happening can happen so fast that people can't grasp it. Okay, that it won't be comprehensive. It won't be effective. And news is going to be the theme of what's going on. Okay, so news. I think we're going to be bombarded with more news as this goes on. And I'm not referring to, I'm thinking Trump news. Okay, I think that more bad things or things that maybe we were unaware of are coming out now. More leakers seem to be, I can't imagine somebody sitting in office and knowing that this stuff's going on and not being able to tell people. So I am the person who believes that sometimes leakers are our heroes, and they are the whistleblowers, and they are heroes. So get ready, okay? Because I think that this is news about a man coming from a woman, and that's already started. I think that, the idea here, there's a Mars Zeus on this, there's a Saturn Zeus, and it's a Kronos Apollon, all in the Pluto. So this is changes, transformations, okay? And I think the news is not good, and I think that's causing a transformation. It's causing also pressure to those who are in charge. And with Mars and Zeus, it could be restraint, but I'm thinking it's the opposite. I think that there's going to be very little restraint. It's going to be tough. I also believe that we're looking at authority in business, or the business of an authority. Okay, so this, again, I'm going to say it personally, but I think it's going to have much more effect on us in the world at large, because I'm not really looking at an individual chart any longer. I'm now in what's referred to as the Aries point axis. Okay? So with that, I'm going to jump to my next chart. And in this chart, I want to look at asteroids, because there's some really interesting asteroids here. For example, let's look at the stuff that falls on the angles, because if you notice, the other chart didn't show a lot of the angles. Remember when I went back to the new moon chart, there was a lot of things on the angles, but this one really only had Venus in the nodes, so it's our relationships and our money, but it didn't really tell us much more than that, and those nodes were on their way out of the angle. So, but I do want to talk about what does fall on the angle. And the first thing I want to start is there's a lot of emotional wounding down here in the house of healing. We are wounded emotionally, and boy, no one can deny that. I also feel that that we are looking at the future as being oppressed, and the oppression probably comes from money. And let's look at why, because all of this is telling us why. It talks about a bully. It talks about a bully with regards to goals, distancing. It talks about how, but it could also be sports. And how are we moving forward with sports? I just had to throw that out there while still distancing. You think about things like football, they better be testing them all the time. Those guys are literally spitting on each other the whole time. So, things like that have to be looked at. There are questions, and there will be questions about that. The fact is that things are moving rather slowly. That is going to be exponentially worse when you take that Mercury opposite Uranus, and you take that Saturn and that Saturn conjunct Neptune, but also the square to Pluto, and then the from Mars, and the square to Saturn from Mars. So everything I've just talked about is going to really play into this. Why I love astrology so much. It's called repeatable themes. Okay? So it's going to go slow, or so we think. And there's this whole, especially the political scene. It's like people are done. They already know who they want to vote for. I really do believe that There's a lot of feeling of gloom and doom. Well, I understand that because of what's going on with Ruth Ginsburg. I also know that that was a very sad thing. That was a major death. And so there's sadness there. There's also going to be some surprises. I'm not sure that all surprises will be good. Remember the other aspects of this particular new moon. We may have this very full chart here, but there's a lot of stuff going on here that we've already mentioned that had a lot less stuff on the chart. So as we look then at this angle, we're really here only looking at, and you notice how the nodes are slightly different here. The chart is the same. And that's what I mean by the nodes are sort of on their way out, because if on one chart picks them up is still in, the next chart they just slipped out. The 21, however, Psyche, does remind us of wounding, emotional wounds, okay? And emotional wounds on the population as well, I would imagine. Now, as we go up to our ascendant, and again, these are all involved. Delays, the advice to delays, okay? Delays are people listening, and it talks about Demeter and Ceres are Ceres are both the mother, okay? In astrology, Ceres, of course, is part of the big four. Demeter is just another smaller asteroid named for the same, only in a different language. And it's that idea of caretaking. It's the idea of being taken care of. It's the idea of nurturing. You know, caring for oneself and nurturing. And I think the one thing the government is not doing, big issue, is particularly on the financial level, they're not looking at how to take care of the people. Okay? And that's going to be a bite to their butts, okay? That is a really big deal. The other part about this is that you're probably going to see a lot more related to the food banks and food, because both of these asteroids, though one is direct and one is retrograde, they both are referring to nurturing in terms of food as well. Now, on a personal level, look to meal times. That seems to be when a lot of the excitement happens, or when you find out your obstacles and your delays, okay? So obstacles and delays, and this is interesting because this Adamite and another asteroid, there's an Adamitas that is an asteroid as well as the Trans-Neptunian. Well, right now they're both running together, and that is not on this, but it is also at 23 degrees Aquarius. I happen to know that because I just wrote a series up for the new moon cycle 2 weeks after this. And I can tell you, actually, maybe even at this time, it's right before this, but it would still be in aspect to this particular ascendant. More delays, more obstacles. So that is going to be an interesting phenomenon as we come into an election period. I can tell you, whatever these delays are, they will be important. Okay, they will be very, very important with this is, let me see if I can say this right, Lacrimosa. Lacrimosa, okay? And it does tell you how serious this is. It's very, very serious. Memory is still in here, just rewards. And if you ask me, this is about people remembering, weren't we just here 4 years ago and you said completely the different thing? So you're going to be seeing a lot of news clips of the past. I'm willing to bet on it, to jar people's memories for just rewards. And ironically, this hubris is fate and karma. Okay, so whatever is going to happen is pretty fated. I think everything about this whole election, much more than we realize, is so fated. And what transpires from this point over the next 2 years will be a result of a lot of things that are going on right now. So I think we're going to be finding a lot out in 2 years, some of which will shock us and some of which will not. Not after what we've been through. So as I move now into, for the last part of what I'm going to do here, I again want to look at the Aries point, this dial a little bit easier to read, but I want to again point out that there is a midheaven Jupiter on it, which I believe gives us hope. So I'm really hoping that maybe because they know they owe it to us now, if you're going to ramrod this down our throats, you better give us some kind of stimulus. And so it is very possible with a midheaven Jupiter in the Aries point in the first axis. Other things would be that the leader concept is going to be out in front of us the whole time. Now, I don't know that this is just what's going on with Trump and his administration. I think this could also be related to them trying to get a judge in there, and a judge is also a Chronos. So that still applies, whether you are conservative or liberal, it still applies. We always hope they do the right things. They don't always, but we hope they do. So this ascendant Zeus at the Aries point is kind of strange too, because that just kind of, again, is a warning to how touchy people are going to be. Now, we saw that Psyche down there at the IC, which means we're all wounded, and believe me, you don't pick at people's wounds. But I really do feel that the Zeus is something between constraint and exuberance that's maybe over the top. Okay, so this will be really interesting to watch. So if I go over to the last part I want to do, which is 2230, which is Pluto. It's interesting because Pluto's right there. In the Aries point, I think that one of the things that's really important is that we all become aware that this is a transformational time, that we are transforming as people. Even if you're not political, this is a time of transformation. If you're political, it's a little bit easier to see, because I truly believe we're going to be changing governments. And I truly believe, after doing Kamala Harris's chart, that it will be complete and total, that the Democrats will take over. And I think that's why the Republicans are acting so badly right now, because when you're losing, there is a tendency to throw all caution to the wind. And the full moon chart tells us we shouldn't be doing that, and yet people are doing it. So be aware that if you personally are in a desperate situation, you don't want to be rash right now. It will not work in your favor. But I do believe that we're going to be hearing some bad news. I believe that there will be delays on everything, because I think that in the end, it is about getting to the bottom of the matter too. And money seems to really play into this. So it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. Now, 2 asteroids I want to include here because they are here. And that would be Abundantia and Urania. Okay? And I want to say that abundant, of course, is abundance. It's just in Spanish. My Spanish, of all the languages I can sort of fake or fudge, ironically, I'm not very good at Spanish. The abundance, though, is running with Pluto. And Pluto is right at the Aries point. So what it indicates is that the transformation it's huge. It's an abundance. It is, but that also means an abundance of power plays, an abundance of manipulations. And it really plays out not far from the environment, because this is an equatorial ascendant. But what seems to really play in, and you can see it a little bit better, see how close it gets to Mars, anger, okay? Urania is astrology. But think about what astrology is. Astrology is logical thought. I always describe astrology, because I did pretty well in algebra, I always think of astrology as algebra that's brought into life. You're looking at point A and point B, and you're talking about what it means to point C or D, okay? And how all of that creates an essence or an energy. So A lot of what's going to be going on during this time, or the Pluto, is also about just making sure that people are healthy, making sure that if we are worried about money, that we can do it in a way that is good for everybody. Okay? It takes a lot of people a long time sometimes to realize that, especially if you're one of the privileged people, that, you haven't lost a business, you continued working, everything that's gone on hasn't meant a whole lot to you, you don't even understand why you have to wear a mask, whatever. But I will say this, even you will come to the reckoning that if you want your life to be better, everyone's life has to be better. That if you have a job and you're going outside and you're walking through town, you're running into a bunch of homeless people, your life isn't any better because all of those people are still homeless and still in need. And we are waking up. There is an ascension going on right now. And people are finally waking up to the fact that my life can't be that great if my neighbor is suffering. My life can't be that great if my black neighbors are being hassled. Okay. I really feel that that's actually happening. That's a part of our healing. And the well-being to the sun is a really good sign of that as well, because it's not just about me being okay. Everybody around me has to be okay, or otherwise, what does it mean if I'm okay? It means nothing. So I think that that's part of our healing. That is what Pluto is doing. We're getting ready for the big Pluto return in this country. We're already feeling the results of that at 2230. We've gotten very close, but it's going to hit us at 27. When it does, I think we'll be on the road to recovery at that point. But until then, let's continue to do the soul searching that's necessary. So let me come back. So I'm just going to come back for a moment just to say goodbye and thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me into your lives. And if you do have comments or if you'd like any private work, please contact me through Divination Counseling Service. And again, I would love to hear from you. I love the comments. And I have a small enough crowd that I can get to everybody, usually in a good amount of time too. So with that said, until we meet again, as always, happy readings.